We often talk about happiness is in giving, having a sense of purpose. There's a lot of conversation and that goes in that realm. What is your, experience in that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, let me just think about that for the purpose and happiness and giving. Okay, I'll I'll start with purpose because for me that was the most relevant in my life. From a quite a young age, I had a strong sense that life for me had some kind of a purpose, that there was a purpose to my life. And I sought about finding that. I was definitely on a kind of path to discover my purpose. And I didn't want to discover my purpose because I had this idea, then I'll be happy. I didn't have that thought. It was strictly a sense that my life is to be about something meaningful. And then as purpose began to reveal itself, there was a very natural corresponding rise in personal happiness and joy. Those two were for me intimately connected. Yeah. So I wasn't necessarily pursuing happiness consciously. Maybe the back of my mind,
Yeah.
I was pursuing joy and happiness, like a sense of lightness in life, ease and grace in life.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our episode of the Happiness Hour. With me today, I have Leon VanderPol, who is the founder and executive director of the Center for Transformational Coaching and author, master teacher, transformative coach, and coach mentor. And above all, a very dear friend. For over 20 years, Leon has devoted his life to personal development and inner transformation. At the core of his teaching lies the transformation of human consciousness. And I'm going to, from here, dive straight into my first question with you. So, welcome, Leon. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. It is good to see you again, my old friend. Yes, to have this conversation on all good things.
Good to see you
Yeah.
too. A master at deep inner transformation. What inspired you to focus on deep transformational coaching, and how is it different, really?
Yeah, what inspired me to focus on it was more of that lifelong inner call to understand the human experience. That's, I think, what it was. And that call began with understanding my own experience and not just my inner experience, like my moment by moment daily experience, but what it means to be a human alive in this world. And what is that universe? Like those really big existential questions were always alive in me from a very young age. I was curious to understand my role and to understand the bigger picture of life. So it was this inner kind of prompting to understand the human experience in all its facets that took me, I think, eventually into the coaching realm. I used to do training and facilitation before that. I was always interested in adult learning, adult development. That was always a part of my world. But what eventually took me to coaching was the intimacy of the conversations and the depth that we were able to touch, explore, and understand the human experience in all of its facets. Not just the desire to say to grow, but also those parts of us that are really limiting and shadowy and dark and heavy. I honestly believe at this point that the vast majority of our planetary people do not comprehend human potential. They often see it as the ability to execute on something external to themselves. They don't see it on a consciousness level or on a highly spiritual level, like those very expansive states of human existence, which really signifies our potential, so to speak. So we get caught up in this idea of potential and achievement or potential in my success. And it's not that success or achievement doesn't matter, it does, but the greater levels of it. So these conversations and these experiences I began to have, and I wanted to understand more and more and more. Eventually that led me to deep coaching. And eventually that led me into opening the center to begin to teach a methodology that can help other people see coaching not just as a means of improving performance or improving communication or getting better at something, or even just exploring who I am a little bit on the surface, making some adjustments and change, but really helping people understand the nature of their experience at a core and fundamental level, and then to begin to slowly grow or expand or experience higher and higher states of personal consciousness. And I think to answer your second question, what makes it different is just that. And we want to move beyond that more transactional surface level conversation. Let's look at the coding, because when you start to look at the coding, you begin to see just how much coding you carry that is actually not yours. It never was. It really is the impact of culture, family, and society, and the conditioning that's layered and layered and layered and layered upon us by the world around us till we just become these like coded machines living out what other people and a world has kind of said, this is what's important and this is what matters. And so when you start to look at that coding, things get really real. And that's where things get really good. And I'm sure you know this, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. So the deep space, the deep realm inside us is truly the place to be and live from. And you really hit that nail on the head that we are so transactional in our daily life. We miss the biggest potential that is hidden in our deepest layers.
Oh, yes. And we're not even necessarily aware of it.
Yeah, that's the
You know what I mean?
biggest.
That's the thing. We're not necessarily even aware of it because in some cultures, and Indian culture is a great example because you do have a very deep, long traditional realm of spirituality and spiritual philosophies deeply embedded. But when I look at other cultures, the North American culture where I live, for example, like we are so disassociated from a lot of this in our early upbringing. It's just like people just have no concept of these potentials until one day something kind of niggles and they wake up to it.
Yeah.
And oh, there's something maybe more. Maybe I'll go explore that. But for the most part, so many people are blind to it.
So, really, you've been doing this for many years now. And if you had, and you offer compassion and healing space, a lot of your work is about
Yes.
offering the space to heal. How
Yes.
can leaders practice compassion in high pressure environment when everybody is all about performance rather than people or
Yes.
feelings also?
Yeah, and so I think any time that we ask a question like how can a leader be a certain way in a certain context, like let's say in the context of stress or the need for high performance, how can they be, let's say, compassionate, or how can they be more of a presence that really allows for greater possibilities to emerge in people? For me, it always begins with the leader and their own journey. In other words, the leader has to want to be that. The
Yeah.
leader has to put that as the thing they do, perhaps above everything else that is on paper their responsibilities, the tasks that they must carry out in order for their position to be successful, for their team to be successful, whatever it may be, their organization. They have to want to look at themselves and say, I think inside of me, there is a desire to be present in a way that changes the way people experience me as a leader and then begin to experience themselves differently. And when that leader makes that choice, let's say to be compassionate, as an example, right? Or even just to be more spacious in a high stress environment. Let's say compassion is one thing, right? To feel empathy and care for other people. Even to be spacious enough to be able to perceive that you're in a highly stressed environment and not have it impact you. These are wonderful qualities for kind of advanced leadership. That really begins with the leader's commitment to understanding the nature of spaciousness and their commitment to understanding the nature of compassion as not just a feeling, but as a field, a kind of energetic field of potentiality. And once they commit to learning that, just like they can commit to feeling gratitude, it's no different, like to develop the attitude of gratitude. It's no different, right? It's that I am committed to understanding what compassion is within me. And that means I need to start looking at everything in me that is a barrier to experiencing a natural flow of compassion because human beings are, I feel, for the most part, quite naturally empathetic and compassionate and connected people, but we are disconnected from that state over time through our upbringing and our conditioning, where we begin to form kind of a protective shell of ego that says, maybe I'm not so safe in this world. So we develop this kind of protection mechanism. That's the egoic shell. And it's really hard to feel compassion for others when you are in yourself feeling somewhat insecure or defensive about your space in life. So this is where for me it begins.
No, I remember hearing, people telling me sometimes fake it till you make it. And I'm like, you can't just keep
Can't fake
it.
that. No,
Can't
you
fake
can't
it
fake
because
compassion.
You can't
Right.
take compassion, and the world
Oh,
sees.
your dog died. Oh, oh, I'm so sorry. You must be feeling terrible. Like there's nothing real about
And
that.
the whole energy field speaks more than just the words. And one picks the inauthenticity so quickly, and you know exactly where the person is coming
Right.
from. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is absolutely a question of willingness to commit to say, I want to be that person. I want to experience that
Yes.
emotion in me.
So you have a choice. You can leave, go find a place that's more aligned to you, or you can become that which is the catalyst for the alignment of others to that part of themselves. And it begins with you. Right?
So, in your book, Shift in Being,
Yes.
you talk about collapse and emergence. Can you tell us a little about the main premise of your book?
Well, the idea of collapse and emergence is what I call the dual dynamics of transformation. And that goes back to this idea. And maybe we can just use the analogy of the caterpillar becoming a butterfly or that process, which is one of kind of a death and emergence. In other words, the caterpillar, and this I write about in my book because for how long I was misinformed, the caterpillar doesn't morph into a butterfly, it doesn't just shapeshift. It actually dies.
Yeah.
And in that death process, there arises a new set of cells that seem to appear quite magically that ultimately begin to give shape to the butterfly. And that simple analogy of the death needs to happen in order for the emergence to happen. In other words, that primordial goo of death and decay that is the rich stew of dying caterpillar is the very thing in which the new cells need the nutrient-rich goo in which these new cells can begin to magically appear and begin to connect and form the butterfly. And that dual dynamics of kind of the death and the emergence, that's the heart of deep transformational work. Like that's the heart of what it takes to really come into a deep sense of who we are. Because first of all, I mentioned all the layers that we take on, the conditioned stuff. That's a big part of it. We take on conditioning. We form a shell of ego. That's a protective mechanism in the world that's here to help us survive as an individual, separate from the world. We've got to battle our way through life. The ego forms. And then we've got all these human impulses that are the shadow side, like just our natural, we are greedy, we are prideful, we are hateful. So here we've got a lot, let's just call it a lot of stuff that we are carrying that is really not authentic to the self that we are, which is really a pure essence. That we are pure essence at heart. And what the transformational journey then invites is this death of all of that which does not reflect who I am in essence, the core of me, the I. And that's the hard part for people because it's like, well, who the heck am I if I let go of all that conditioning, all those values and beliefs? Like, who am I without all of these markers that say this is who I am? Who am I if I really try to drop all the shadowy stuff that have really been a part of my life for so long? Like, if I am known as one who is a driving, hard striving, make it happen kind of leader, and I realize that that's motivated by my own deep insecurity, my own deep need to show up in the world as successful so I can feel safe. And if I drop all that, what'll happen? Like, what happens to my motivation? If
Yeah.
motivation is kind of connected to my sense of security and being seen and being acknowledged and validated, so that gives rise to this interesting dynamic of resisting. So there's the death, and the emergence then is, but as we do that work to clear away all that which stands in the way of self-recognition, then we begin to really emerge into a new selfhood. And that's the beauty, isn't it? Right? When we begin to touch a reality that lies beyond anything we may have ever known before, and we experience it, it's like, okay, there's something there that is incredibly powerful. It is brilliant. It is essential. It is vivid. It wants to create. It wants to be active. It wants to express, but from a very different source of origin than I have been in the past. So those are the dual dynamics, the kind of the collapse and the emergence
Yeah, it's really
piece. Yeah.
awakening to the true identity of I and shedding everything that is not that.
Not I. And that's not an easeful thing to do,
It is a
right?
very, very challenging journey, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
would say it with 100% or maybe 110% that it is worth every moment. Because the way I look at it is the pain of shedding is far less than this pain of carrying all of that.
Yeah, their own journey. But it's a kind of that point when they say, there is more, there's something, this is not, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Right? That point, like this is just not working for me. I'm exhausted. I'm stressed out. I'm burnt out. I'm overwhelmed. My relationship is falling apart with my spouse or my partner. My kids are not talking to me. Like whatever it may be, there's going to be some external kind of indicator
Yeah.
that this is just like I'm overweight. My health is killing me, whatever it is. Yeah.
I think it's that typical human wishful thinking that we keep. The way I say, we've seen it for centuries, and humanity hasn't, our fabric hasn't changed. Each one, however, thinks they found a new formula for it, and it all depends who chooses when to look into the mirror when and how their journey
Yeah.
pans out.
Exactly. So I'm just going to assume that the people that are listening to this conversation right now, the people tuning into your podcast, are already there. That they're sensing, okay, this thing called whatever, happiness, joy, more easeful living, more graceful living, whatever that concept is, or at least less stressful living, less pressured living. Those people listening right here, right now, are sensing, okay, there's a journey to be had here into this innermost chamber of being, and I don't necessarily know what it's going to look like and what it's going to entail. But thankfully, Leon and Asher are saying it's worth it.
And it's possible. It's possible for
And
everybody.
it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Thankfully.
I mean, I totally relate to what you're saying because, when I stepped onto this journey, there were these whole questions around what does success mean to me? Am I going invisible suddenly? The fear of being invisible, irrelevant, so many conditionings that I had to really get past
Yes.
that actually it's beautiful to be sometimes invisible and just being with yourself.
Oh,
Uh,
it's fantastic. And you can stop and look around and go, how the heck did I get here? Like, who are these people around me? And just take it all in. Like,
yeah.
just marvel at how did you end up in this spot with these people doing this thing? Like, okay, great. I'm invisible, but I get to witness it all.
Yeah, so that being the witness of it all without getting caught into it all is really the place to be.
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic, and it does arise, as you said, from a feeling like I don't need to be seen. The invisibility is not a shying away from being seen, which we do know people have, right? I'm choosing invisibility because I don't want to be seen because my self-esteem, my sense of worth is particularly low. What we're talking about is just being absolutely okay being a witnessing presence, and that's very different.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that for our listeners because, yes, invisible does not mean isolating or disappearing.
No,
It simply means being that witnessing presence and being okay with that, being
yes.
absolutely okay with that.
Right. And that's a powerful leadership trait, from my view, because there are going to be times when, you're if you're a witnessing presence, you're attuning to something more than say just the thing that's being conversed about or the decision that needs to be made. You're attuning to a greater field of human relation and energy, thought, and often then you can bring to the fore for everybody to perceive something more essential or something at the core, like what's really going on here, because you're able to detach enough and not need to be the one whose opinion is right or the one who drives this forward so that you can take in a greater whole. So there's a real powerful leadership ability in that ability to be the witnessing presence.
Yeah, to step back and let others blossom as well. So there is fallacy or a belief, I would say, that exists amongst the world that if you're successful, you're happy, and you have to be successful to be happy.
Mm.
What are your views on that, on happiness?
Yeah, that's a good question. You got to be successful to be happy. Okay. And then we just can start to list all the successful people who are unhappy. So we know that's a myth. I mean, everybody knows that's a myth right now.
Yet
I
we
do
chase it.
understand that.
Yet we chase it.
Sorry?
Yet we chase it. Yet
Yeah, we
everybody,
chase it.
we chase it. We
Right.
want to be
Right.
like them.
Right. because I do feel that there is a human impulse, a big one that's just wired into who we are, to be creative beings. And when we learn the creative capacity of our mind, so it really is from a journey from birth until, middle age, where we're starting to learn the creative capacity of our mind to shape the world in ways that are desirable for ourselves. So then bringing creative things to fruition is deeply satisfying. Like, certainly, I watch my young children when they were younger, they're a bit older now, but when they were young, to watch them, let's say, compete on the field and win at a soccer game. I didn't have to teach them to be happy to be winning. Simply winning on the soccer field created joy in very young children. Beating the other team was awesome. So there is in us as human beings from a young age a competitive impulse, an impulse to have fun with it, but also a real natural joy that arises from winning, from succeeding. Okay, add to that then a culture that goes, well, it does feel good to win. So when you win, if I cheer for you, also feel good. So now parents feel good that their kids win. Yay. And it comes from a very, very natural human impulse. So it's not to discount this idea that certain levels of success create happiness, because real happiness and joy there. But it's fleeting at times. It's very much fleeting. And what happens is we're not taught, in my view, what it means to sustain happiness as kind of a state of mind and being, or joy as a state of mind and being. So we are in moments of happiness, which then are preceded by moments of just normality, and we think, wow, I felt really good. Maybe I should get some more of that. That was really good. So we then take that human impulse to create and we go about seeking another endeavor. We make it work. We feel good about our success. We're validated by the world. That was awesome. That was great. So, but we're learning about our innate capacities to create, which I think is very, very important as human beings. This is not something to be discounted. We do need, because we grow our self-esteem and our sense of self-worth when we learn that we can make the world happen in ways that our mind envisions. That's a powerful, powerful thing. But it also becomes a little bit of a drug, sort of speaking, like in the sense that we start to chase the high, the happiness of this success because we haven't learned what it is to sustain it. Now, I don't mean sustain it at peak levels. And so we got to bring that down. And then it's like, okay, so then what does that kind of normality feel like? What does that feel like? Not the peaks necessarily, and not definitely, it's not the troughs, because I know those too. So that's not happiness. So what is it, that normality that we can then experience, which really sustains our life, which really feels like it is constantly contributing to an overall life experience that we find deeply fulfilling and meaningful? And that's the tricky part, because that's the part we're not taught. That's the part that it seems you need to go on this, what I call transformational journey of really coming to know yourself and to finding that level of happiness, that flow, that energetic state that is consistently sustainable for the most part. And you know how to sustain it just by the sheer act of living versus the act of constantly finding the thing that you create to be the source of my happiness. Yeah. So it's happiness through the act of living versus happiness attained through momentary successes.
Very well said. That it is something that can be and needs to be sustainable and not euphoric moments, because that's exhausting.
It's
That's
exhausting. Oh yeah, like you have your dopamine, because it's a dopamine rush. Like
yeah,
it's all your dopamine leaves the building, and the next day you're lying in bed exhausted. Like what happened?
yeah. And you cannot be on that trip all the time. So,
No.
we often talk about happiness is in giving, having a sense of purpose. There's a lot of conversation and that goes in that realm. What is your, experience in that?
The relationship between happiness and
And purpose
purpose
and giving, yeah.
and giving. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, let me just think about that for the purpose and happiness and giving. Okay. I'll I'll start with purpose because for me that was the most relevant in my life. From a quite a young age, I had a strong sense that life for me had some kind of a purpose, that there was a purpose to my life. And I sought about finding that. I was definitely on a kind of path to discover my purpose. And I didn't want to discover my purpose because I had this idea, then I'll be happy. I didn't have that thought. It was strictly a sense that my life is to be about something meaningful. But what the heck is that? I don't really know. And yes, in the struggle to discern that purpose, I certainly didn't always feel happy. In fact, I felt often the very opposite of happy:
Yeah.
frustrated, disappointed, angry at the universe, like lying on my couch, shaking my fist at God, the universe going, "What the? I am so ready for you to reveal my purpose and for me to live it. And where the heck is it? And why isn't it happening?" Like, there were many moments of kind of a depression, but I knew I was on the path. I didn't understand why it had to be the way it was. I didn't understand why unhappiness was so interwoven into me finding this purpose. But I will say that I was on the path and I knew it at some core level that this is what I had to go through to reveal something very essential for me about my work, about the way that I was to be in this world, whatever it may be. And then as purpose began to reveal itself, there was a very natural corresponding rise in personal happiness and joy. Those two were for me intimately connected. Yeah. So I wasn't necessarily pursuing happiness consciously. Maybe the back of my mind,
Yeah.
I was pursuing joy and happiness, like a sense of lightness in life, ease and grace in life, but it was deeply connected to my creative expression, which I'm calling purpose, which would, it's a creative expression. It's an expression of my being, of my essence, right? That was intimately connected. And as I revealed more of that, happiness became very much a natural companion for me. So that was kind of the process. And then as happiness becomes a natural companion, because work is meaningful, because your relationships are growing and strengthening, because your creative ideas are coming to life. And I don't just mean creative ideas that someone else said, you need to do this because this is your job, but truly creative ideas of my own making are coming to life. There's definitely corresponding levels of joy and happiness revealing themselves, not through the attainment of them, but because it's deeply, deeply meaningful and satisfying to live in this way. And that for me is the third part when you said giving. So now, as I feel a higher level of self satisfaction and joy, meaning in life, I'm doing work that is creative and different and challenging and all of that. Naturally, there's now an impulse to want to share that. The Course in Miracles, a book that had a lot of impact on me, always said, love only wants to do one thing, and that is love wants to extend itself. Love seeks to extend itself. That is it. And I found this to be true because I equate that sense of consistency and happiness with an abiding sense of love. And I don't just mean as an emotion, like in a romantic feeling. I mean, love is a kind of an intelligence that nurtures life, that gives rise to life, that sustains and propels life. Like, that's it. And as I experience more love, joy, all it wants to do is extend itself from me into the world. Like, I become a channel for the ongoing dissemination of this thing called love. And love wants to give. There's nothing else it wants to do. It wants to give financially. It wants to give of energy. It wants to give of words. It wants to give of wisdom. It just wants to give and extend and extend. So giving became then a very normal, natural output of a higher flow of happiness, which I also equate to love and joy. And so that's kind of the journey for me. It was purpose into happiness, into love, and the extension of that to giving.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for connecting all the three elements together.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I will take you back a moment in what you just said, that when we are on this journey and there are moments of frustration, depression, we go through
Oh, yes.
all the because that negativity has to come out. How do you keep yourself motivated or anchored and get up the next day to say, I have to stay the course, because
Mm,
it is so easy to just give up.
it is, yeah. Well, you know me, and I'm a deeply spiritual person. And I would just say that a big piece of my journey from a very young age has been a ongoing, evolving relationship with spirit. And we can define that in any way we want, this term spirit, but just that greater consciousness that is life, that sustains, that propels, that creates. Like, to me, that relationship and the potentials of that relationship have underpinned everything. I can't even I can't even imagine a life that is disconnected from a vast intelligence and consciousness that is all in support of me. That is the intelligence of life coming through in everything we see. Like, I don't even know what it would look like or feel like to be detached from that. So simple things for me, if I had a morning where I woke up rough, as an example, stressed out or anxious, the first thing I would always do is I would go to my meditation couch. Meditation was me talking to my innermost self. My meditation was a communion with spirit and an invitation for support. Like, I need support. I need wisdom. And just to do that in the most stillest, quietest way, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, some people might say was prayer. Now, prayer is, again, different for different people. Some people say prayer is asking for things. And there was an element of me like, yes, I am in need of something. I need support. I need energy. I need motivation. Whatever it was. So that communion idea that I am communing with spirit has underpinned my life from a very young age. And it continues to. But it's a different relationship, because what happens is, as we start to go on this journey and we clear out more and more of the stuff, the gunk that clogs the machine, so to speak, spirit is better able to connect and communicate to us. It better is able to then feed us with nurturing energies and thought patterns that really propel us forward. And soon what happens is that, I've noticed for me, is that my life wants to become a channel for spirit, that I want to become a clear and pure channel for those thought patterns, those energies, those ideations, and just allow that to be kind of uninterrupted communion. So today I don't necessarily fall into the pitfalls of life as much, but my practice is still one of ongoing communion, because spirit is the container, you might say, of these frequencies of happiness that we seek. It is the nature of life. So if we are able to connect with that existential reality, then it comes in. It's not just something you have to generate. You have to generate happiness. Happiness is the
You,
fabric of life.
yeah, you just have
Is.
to open up.
Right. Open up and clear out.
Yeah.
And then it is
And
something we can relate to,
yeah.
right? And for me, I call that spirit. That process of communion into life is spirituality.
So if you had to give one line or one sentence that is your favorite, other than the one you talked about, the book on miracles, what would it be for the audience if you had to close with one thing?
Maybe the greatest learning that I ever learned in my journey towards purpose and happiness and the fulfilling life that I really do lead now. And I don't say that lightly. And I don't say that I don't live without challenge. I'm absolutely human, and life is always kind of pushing me. But what I realized a long time ago was that on this journey to fulfilling kind of a high dream for your life, the sense that your life is to be something extraordinary, which every life can be, unquestionably. But if you have that sense that there is so much more to life, and you have dreams and ideas that you think, if I could create this, if I could make this happen, the biggest thing I can say to people is you need to go on a journey of becoming. So this journey of becoming is not a journey of doing, is it? It's not a journey of doing. It's a journey into the innermost space of our being, so that we become that which we are. In a sense, we recognize the reality of ourselves at the core, and we allow ourselves to clear away everything that stands in the way of that expression. And that's the becoming journey. So I would say to everyone is you have to become the person for whom your high dreams are possible. Go on that heroic journey of becoming. Don't hold back. It will seem risky. You will be frightened to your core at times. It'll be hard at times. But as you said earlier, Ashu, it
Yeah,
only leads
yeah,
to paradise in a sense, right? A kind
absolutely.
of earthly paradise of living.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
everywhere. It's here around us. We just have
Yes.
to embrace it.
Yes. Yeah. It's a paradigm. I like the word paradigm too. It's a paradigm that we enter into that is unlike any other paradigm, which means all the same things exist. Finances exist, work exists, relationships exist. All these things still exist in this new paradigm. They just work differently.
On that most beautiful note, I would like to
Yeah.
say thank you very much for being with me today and having this conversation, which is,
Truly welcome.
yeah, full of
Truly
love
welcome.
and
Yeah.
full of possibility for everybody.
Yeah. That's
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.